Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome back to MX Bikes, where today we're going to, once again, try to see how close the ARL track in MX Bikes was to the real track in Dallas on the weekend. Kind of been a fun little series to go back and rehash these tracks and see how close they do get, because I don't get a chance to play these tracks until pretty much today, usually being gone on the weekends going to the races. So for me, it's always kind of fun to like go actually see the race and then come back and play this track and be like, oh, they did this or they didn't do this or what have you. And as we've mentioned on this series before, these guys build the track off the blueprint and release it on the Friday before the real race. So there's always going to be some minor discrepancies, but as we kind of laid into ARL and Stone Rider and those guys back at Glendale for missing the mark a lot, they've honestly kind of hit the nail on the head the last couple weeks since then. So shout out to the crew. This is, of course, Arlington, and really I feel like they did as close to what they could have done as possible, because two things here. So this section out of turn one, during qualifying and on press day, this was the line. It would double in right here, and then you would use this big single to go all the way either up onto this table and off, or over the table and three into the corner. Even some 250 guys were doing it. So that line was totally the line, which you can do in this game. And then this line actually became the race line. On press day, they were going triple and then quadding all the way into the corner. At least Chase Sexton was. Cooper Webb tried it. He went over the berm. But they knocked that down a little bit, and then it became a 3-3-1 option. So honestly, like, as close as you can, they got those two sections right. This one is backwards from what it was. They had the triple at the end of this whoop section, which there's no way to predict they would have done that. They just decided to make that change. And then the finish line jump was just a standard finish line jump. So, like, I feel like for all the marks that they could have gotten wrong, they actually nailed like the base layout of the track totally fine. Even here, I think it was going to be possible to double out of the sand. They just kind of made it so that it was, you know, even out by rolling into it and 2-2 instead of 3-2 from the outside or 2-3 from the outside, which is what the option line was. Double right there. And then, like I said, yeah, they would swing out here. They'd kind of double in right here and then seat bounce over that table and then three into this corner. So that was one of the lines they were doing in qualifying. And then they were going triple quad through here, but then it eventually just became a triple single. And Chase Sexton even said in the post-race press conference that he felt like it was going to be, or it was possible to go triple quad in that section in the third race because of how the ruts had laid out and everything like that. So round of applause, in my opinion, to the ARL track crew. They nailed it on the head once again here for this track, pretty much as close as you can get it to building it beforehand. So let's break down this track a little bit and talk about what worked and what didn't. I feel like overall it was a pretty good racetrack. I think what worked about it was that it had so many different elements that could create basically just mistakes. The sand section was obviously a big mistake section. A lot of guys tipping over or falling down in that one. And then honestly, getting these rhythm sections right was really a struggle for a lot of guys, and actually nailing the lines and stuff like that. So that was also a different, you know, problem area. Tripling in right here was kind of tough for some dudes. So overall, I think that the Dirtworks crew deserves some credit on this one as well for presenting a track that had some technical challenges to it, but was still, in my opinion, pretty safe, and created option lines as well, because you could have guys that were doing slightly different things and gaining time and so on and so forth. Obviously, there's a few huge crashes in the whoops. Jordan Smith, hopefully he gets well soon. Sounds like he cracked 4 ribs, I think it was, and then punctured a lung, little laceration on his spleen. They're keeping him in the hospital through at least today, I believe, for observations. But, you know, that was a huge crash in the whoops. It was basically just a whoops crash. Like, you can't put it down to the way they built the whoops or anything like that. He just started skating sideways, and by the time it hooked and caught, he just got spit over in a high side. Brutal crash. But yeah, I think the rest of the track ended up being really enjoyable to watch. Good race lines, a lot of different options, like I said, and a lot of, in my opinion, kind of cool sections too. So shout out Dirtworks for that. And then I feel like I said, ARL did a good job replicating it to bikes. I want to try a couple different lines here to see if we can make some things happen. Obviously, the tire tap was not an option right there, which they did IRL. And then beforehand, the whoops came out of this corner, so can't really do anything different here, but bounce through the whoops a little bit. Jump line in the whoops, as those guys were starting to do the jump lines a little bit. But let's go outside in the sand because I can show you guys what the options were here. Obviously, in real life, they pretty much made it so going outside in the sand sets you up to double, triple, and inside it was roll 2-2. But on this version, same as MX Sim, you can go out here and get a good enough run to triple in. Some guys did triple in out of the sand, I feel like, so it wasn't all for loss. And then, like I said, the main line that ended up being through here was you tuck inside and they rolled this single out, so then you go over this single and then you would go over the table 3 into the corner. So they got rid of that quad over the table. And I've had people, bring it up like, oh, why did they take this out? We did this exact same thing talking about Detroit of why they took this quad out right here specifically. So Chase Sexton was doing this quad right here on press day, and it was big, no question about it. I think most of the time when you have lines like that are all or nothing, you have guys get a little bit weary of potential injuries. But the problem that this one had, the same thing as Detroit, is if you go for it and you get a little bit wrong and you go over this berm, you're hitting people coming in the other lane, which is what Detroit had because there's a sand section of the outside of the quad as well. And I talked to the AMA in Detroit about that, and they said that yes, they like to mitigate the risk for lanes, riders being hit in opposite lanes. And they didn't have a Steve Mathis Memorial net in that corner because they did have one after the whoops right here to keep people from going over the berm after the whoops into the sand. And they did have one in the corner after the first rhythm section, which is over there. You can see that all the way in the corner. So actually ARL nailed where they put the nets as well. And not funnily enough, but sadly enough, the nets that are made in real life, they always put them pretty much from this point of the corner and to the right, because in their opinion, more likely than not, if someone's getting squirrely, they're not going all the way off right here. Well, unfortunately, my colleague at Swap Moto Live, Chase Curtis, did actually fall victim to this when Henry Miller got a little squirrely in the LCQ, coming into the corner and swooped off to here and landed on Chase Curtis, who was standing right next to the starting line here, has a big old fracture in his leg, already got a rod inserted through it, and there's a GoFundMe page set up for some medical expenses that he's going to incur because it's a pretty expensive surgery. So I'll try to remember to include a link of that in the description below, but shout out to him because that was a bummer deal for sure. Just a pretty random freak incident. And but yeah, back to the safety issue, talking about nets. If they don't have the ability to put a net around like that first turn area and mitigate the risk of someone quadding and going over that berm into the other lane, then they'll just fix the track. And I've had people say, well, why don't they have more nets? Why don't they get another one? They should. They really should. They only have 2 of the Steve Mathis Memorial nets on hand, the same way they only have 1 over-under bridge. So I think maybe they'll start investing in more of those in the future, I guess, because I feel like it's kind of needed if they're going to start cutting out sections like this because of dangers like that. But at the end of the day, they still also don't really like quads like that where, it's kind of high risk, I guess, where if someone gets it right, great. If someone gets it wrong, really, really bad. And I think after the quad in San Diego, where some guys are complaining and a couple guys got hurt, Ty Masterpool, they just kind of were like, you know what? It's not really worth it to keep piling quads into this track. So I miss it. I wish that they would have kept that quad in. But, Chase Sexton also said that even though they fixed the lip down a little bit, he still thinks it was doable. So I don't know. Catch-22, I think they could have left it. I think they could have, maybe done some stuff to lower the landing a little bit or maybe smooth out the takeoff so you had a little bit more forward lift and it was a little bit safer than getting peaked up so high in the air, etc., etc. But that's why they took that out. And again, kind of circling back, the ARL crew, they didn't know that quad was either going to be doable or not doable or how close to doable it would be. And to be honest, I feel like they found this weird perfect middle ground with it where I genuinely think it is doable in this game. But you got to get the corner before it absolutely bang on to triple in without seat bouncing and then land in transition perfectly and then kind of like seat bounce to triple. I'll try it right here, but it's tough. It's out of this corner, no seat bounce. I went a little bit long. But no seat bounce. Honestly, maybe even a scrub out of the corner would be ideal here. And then when you're sitting down on the takeoff, you can kind of seat the next one. So stand up, sit. And we're a little bit short right there. But, even that, a little short and still almost tripled with letting off. It was a noticeable floater. You could float into that corner pretty easily. So let's swing around to the outside here. Try one more time. Through this corner, no seat bounce. And then yeah, I mean, you 3.5 pretty easily there, but you gotta get that triple in clean, and it is almost doable. So, like I said, bang on the money. They found that weird middle ground where the line that Chase Sexton's talking about was probably doable on this game, but it's tough and almost impossible for most everyone. So, again, kudos ARL. Well done to them. And yeah, definitely a track you guys should check out if you haven't already. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. A little dive into Arlington 2025 in MX Bikes, seeing how close these lines were to being done. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, hit me up in the comment section below. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one. So long for now.